This story is titled The British Butterfly Collector. These are true tales of my African adventures. May this inspire you, deter you, caution you, and above all, entertain you. I was approached by a rather serious butterfly collector from England. He had inquired at a very well-known pet shop in Johannesburg, run by a fabulous Jewish man, and had asked if they knew of a guide who could take him into the nether regions of the country to fulfill one of his dreams, capturing butterflies for his collection in England. He had captured all possible species from within Britain and many from elsewhere in the world, and now Africa's butterflies were to be captured to boost his collection. His enthusiasm was unbounded. The pet shop owner knew me well, and I received a call from the butterfly hunter. He and I met. I suggested Machuba's Kloof near Tzaneen. I had been there once and I was taken by the large and beautiful butterflies in the forested valleys, beautiful swallowtail butterflies as well. Having at one time collected butterflies myself, I knew a like-minded person would find himself in butterfly heaven there. We set off in his hired car. He loved everything about South Africa and was so terribly keen that he could hardly contain himself, bursting out of his rather sober British demeanour like a butterfly emerging from its larval state. We had a deal. I led him to his quarry, but I would pursue my own quarry on the same trip. I asked for no fee. Fee? What was that? Helping others was such a pleasure. The thought of asking for money in return was an unknown concept to me. On the farm we established ourselves for the 2 days of our sojourn. All conditions were ideal. Some rain, hot steamy valleys, grassy slopes, and butterflies en masse. This collector was a master. His nets, traps, and other gadgets made him the James Bond of butterfly procurement. I watched him for ages setting his traps, stalking specimens, and launching his sudden attacks on his unsuspecting prey. More than once I beheld him charging down a grassy slope, reminiscent of a Gurkha in full flight, doing his regiment proud as he sounded his battle cry before pinning his quarry to the ground in a flowing net. He returned to England triumphant. His trip was not all a bed of roses, however. He was to experience our ineptitude in maintaining dangerous quarry in confinement. Whilst driving through the Pietersburg district, now Polokwane, after dark at around 19:30, his headlights fell on a large puff adder emerging from the grassy verge of the road. "Snake," I shouted, "pull over." This was our deal. We capture our quarry and he captures his. It was our turn. 15 minutes later and we were off again. The snake was in a bag and the bag in turn was in a protective canvas rucksack behind his seat. Our butterfly stalker was a happy man, not fazed by the reptiles. He found all events he experienced in Africa quite delightful, except one. Our snake bag containing the puff adder had held several reptiles before, and at least a few had defecated in the bag over time. The acidity of the previous feces, which had long dried in the bag, had weakened the fabric and its stitching. This large and powerful and venomous captive, fulfilling his duty to escape, forced his way through the weakened stitching to freedom. Body free of the bag, he now began to make good, as I am sure he thought, his escape. Snakes are so stealthy, quiet and patient that they can move amongst people without arousing any attention, especially in the dark. Since our feet were unmoving and booted, the puff adder moved over our extremities without our attention being roused. Our visitor, however, was in the sandals and socks routine and not insensitive to movement over his feet. During one of our many conversations, he suddenly stopped speaking, then yelled a chilling cry, pulling his knees up to his ears and jamming both feet against the dashboard on either side of the steering wheel. The car veered all over the road. We thought he may be suffering a seizure or some other medical event. As the car began to slow, with him now steering it off the road into the bush, we urgently inquired, "Are you okay? Can we help? Are you in need of something?" The car was nearly at a standstill. He glared at me wildly. "The bloody snake was on my feet." "On your feet?" He was clearly suffering from delusion. Africa and the excitement and the heat were getting to him. "Yes, on my feet. Get it out from under me." The car stalled, nose against a fence, headlights lighting up the bush ahead. I aimed my torch at the pedals below the steering column. He was not delusional. The snake filled the area below the pedals and now began hissing loudly. Our visitor's utterances are unprintable. I urged him to remain still as I bailed out the passenger seat and ran around to his door. He couldn't remain in his seat a second longer and thrust himself out into the open like an animated sack of potatoes. He thumped to the ground and scrambled to a safe distance as I carefully recaptured the escapee. This time we placed it in a newer bag and then in the boot. His humor returned after a short while, and he mocked us while we in turn mocked his butterfly capturing activities. His adventure was now complete. He would return to England with his impressive butterfly collection from Africa and a close shave story to match.